Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who is hopefully going to cause you to pause, and you're going to find out why that's so important. Richard Medcalf describes himself as what you get if you were to put a McKinsey consultant and a slightly unorthodox pastor and an entrepreneur into a blender. He grew up in the UK with a younger sister who was severely mentally disabled. This instilled in him a conviction that when we do have talents and opportunities, we owe it to others to make the biggest positive impact. Richard's childhood was marked by a love of board and role-playing games and science fiction novels. The common themes reveal a love of complexity and imagination. In his teenage years, he fell in love with rock music and electric guitar, becoming the self-proclaimed #1 fan of the rock band Queen. After a master's degree at Oxford University, where he came top in his year, Richard started his career in a premier strategy consultancy. He became the youngest ever partner and then moved to tech giant Cisco. He spent their years in various leadership roles, elevating Cisco's relevance to the C-suite of its Fortune 100 customers. He was then selected for an elite team set up by Cisco's president and CEO, John Chambers and Chuck Robbins, to catalyze strategic partnerships and new business models. After 20 years in the corporate world, Richard realized his true mission was to help high-achieving and successful leaders move out of their comfort zone and maximize their positive impact on their team, their business, and the world. As a result, Richard founded X Quadrant. He now operates as a leadership consultant and trusted advisor to exceptional CEOs and their leadership teams, helping them lead more strategically and influentially so that they genuinely multiply their impact. Richard is binational, English, French, lives near Paris and is happily married and the proud father of 2. He is also a licensed lay minister in the Anglican Church and has an insatiable love for spicy food and the electric guitar. Richard Medcalf, welcome.
Hi, Jim. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and ready to dive in.
Yeah, well, then thanks for helping us all get over the hump. And so I'm excited because we're going to talk about something that I would dare to say every single person on this planet who is in a modern country, and maybe even getting into some others, has a problem with. And that is the ceiling of complexity. And I think for many of us, we probably think that thing has crashed on us. But tell us a little bit about the ceiling of complexity.
Yeah, the ceiling of complexity is, I say, it's a common feeling of us all, right? We live in a world of infinity. Think about it. We've got an infinite amount of things we can do at any one moment, an infinite number of books we can read on our Kindle, an infinite number of films we can watch on Netflix, an infinite number of people we can connect with on social media, an infinite amount of tasks and reading material awaiting for us in our inbox and on the web, right? So there's always so much. And there's so many opportunities and so many requests on our time that, well, most people's response is just to hit the accelerator, just to get busier and busier, trying to deal with all this inflow. And yet there is a point where there's no more hours in the day. Try as we might, we just hit into, I call it the ceiling of complexity. We can't go any further. We can't go any faster. And most people end up just spending their lives, when you're in a leadership role, and as you said, I work with many very senior people, and even the most senior people, they're jammed up against this ceiling of complexity. They're running fast. They're always saying, I'm crazy busy. I'm really overloaded. It'll get better next quarter, but it never does. And of course, this creates real problems for people. It creates tunnel vision. People can't step back and think about the real strategic things, and they don't work on the big levers as a result.
Well, as you're saying that, I start thinking about how different people respond to that. We have all of these. If you think about just looking at it from a personality perspective and all the different types of personalities. If you want to even talk about like the Myers-Briggs example, and we have, I don't know, 20 or so different categories of personality. Yeah. Is it a situation where it's just that we don't have right people in these leadership roles because of their personality type and how they handle things? I mean, is that part of the problem, or is it really something different?
I mean, I've seen it across all personalities, I would say. It's actually a bit of a paradox. It's actually almost the more capable you are, the more you are almost tempted to try and deal with infinity by yourself, because you've got high capacity. So I'm like, I can take on a lot of stuff. I can run fast. I'm probably the fastest problem solver on my team, right? Whatever it is. And so, and often people become successful earlier on in their career by saying yes, by taking on more stuff and by being efficient and delivering a lot of value, right? But when you get to a certain level, then it's the seeding of complexity that really kicks in, because actually you are no longer capable of dealing with the opportunities that are inflowing and the requests on your time from your bosses, from your peers, from your customers, or whatever it is. And so I think it's almost not so much about personality, but almost competency. You could say people are overloaded sometimes because they're not skilled at managing some of that. But actually, it's almost the opposite as well. Is when you're very skilled, it still happens to you. So for me, it's more a function of our environment, actually, and our instinct to want to solve all the problems and deal with all the issues.
As you're talking, I start thinking about some of the statistics associated with readiness, bench strength in regards to leaders. Mm-hmm. And one statistic is coming to mind where a bunch of HR professionals were polled of a large, of all kinds of actually different organizations. And they were saying that they believe that only 18% of their staff is capable or able to handle a leadership or a leadership level role and responsibility up from where they are. So if you look at just overall bench strength, it's very weak. So is it that the case, or is it the scenario that you're kind of, really painting a picture on well, if you're strong, we're going to keep putting weight on your back, right? And at some point, you're going to break. So is it just that we don't have strong leaders, or is it just that our expectations are just way out of whack?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean, I suppose the way I'd see it is that when you hit the ceiling of complexity, you become unable to step up to a new level of impact. And therefore, when that's happening, perhaps you're meeting expectations, but you're probably not exceeding expectations in a sense, because you're kind of stuck in the incremental, right? You're not wowing people because you're basically maxed out. You're doing a good job probably in what you're doing, but you're not getting to another level of impact that's going to make people go, well, they're ready for the next role. Okay. So that's how I'd see it. So I'd see it as more, it's if you can deal with this factor, then probably you'll be able to add more value and people's perceptions of you will shift.
Okay. So then I start thinking about this other issue. Like a lot of folks talk about hitting the glass ceiling, yet another ceiling, when they get to a certain point within their career. And if we think about this, oftentimes people can elevate to a position of authority and responsibility because of their technical aptitude and expertise, right? Yep. However, when we start getting to higher levels of an organization, those skills must flip and become more people-oriented, right? So now we get into, I had essentially something that was somewhat hard skills, being technical. Now I need to flip to what, I don't even like the word, but this is what people call it, the soft skills, because I need to get other people involved. Yep. I need to work cross-functionally. So is it that this ceiling of complexity has to also, or corresponds with, or correlates to that glass ceiling of having to flip from technical to people skills?
Yeah. So first of all, good point about soft skills. I'd say that they're not soft skills, they're hard skills, because a lot of people don't have them, right? And everyone thinks they have them. And when you ask, does your manager have them? They're like, no. Right? So I call them super skills, right? Because they are the secrets to influence, impact, mobilizing people, bringing organizations with you, transforming hearts and minds, culture, all the rest of it, right? So why people call them soft, I don't know. I think it's just because they don't know how to grab them, right? But I think you're right. It is a question of changing your success formula, because clearly your current success formula has maxed out and you're now at the ceiling of complexity. And so to burst through, you need to change gears. And that's going to involve doing something different. Your success is not going to be by delivering even more projects, managing even more customers, whatever it is. It's going to be slowing down and going to have that one conversation that changes everything, right? It's going to be slowing down and realizing if we were to build this capability, we could actually free up 50% of our time that we're doing on all this stuff over here. We can change the game. And so I think you're right. When people get trapped in that kind of technical mastery and they don't make it up, it's because they're running in their comfort zone. They're probably running hard, right? They're doing a lot because they're probably at a relatively senior level and they need to generate the value, but they're doing it by running fast and not by changing gears. I would say, you can't change gears when your foot's on the accelerator. So you have to free up what I call strategic margin. Strategic margin is time in the week, which is not dedicated to keeping the lights on. It's dedicated to breaking through the ceiling of complexity, right? It's dedicated to investing in building a capability in the business, a skill set in yourself, a relationship, whatever it is, that's going to create a new level of impact, or that's going to free you up to create more impact in the future. So very simply, if you can find, I'll give you an example from very early in my career, actually. When I was a consultant, I started my life in strategy consulting, and I was an analyst, graduate analyst with lots of Excel business plans to build. I remember after I'd done it for a few months, I realized that a lot of the projects had similar requirements. You had to build an Excel sheet, and you had to create some business plan and financials, and you had to create some graphics for the report and all the rest of it. And so I sat down between engagements once, and I spent probably, I'm going to say it was several days probably, or I worked late at night or whatever it was, to build a whole load of templates, toolbars, little modules like a copy and paste to really speed up the process of building these business cases that I was doing repetitively. Most people just started with a blank sheet each time and built a totally custom model for the needs of that client. I went and spent this time building this kind of infrastructure, and everyone at the time was like, Richard, why are you staying late? What's the point in doing this? No one's asking for this thing that you're doing. And they were right. It took me ages, and they were all either going to the pub early, or they were doing their customer work and getting their, improving their metrics whilst I was doing this kind of private project. Of course, the difference was that suddenly, a week or so later, models that took them a week to build, I was building in half a day. And they were beautifully well presented models, better than anybody in the organization, because I thought, well, if I'm going to build a template, I may as well make it beautiful, well designed, and flexible enough that if I want to do a different cut of the data, it's really simple and everything else. And so my models suddenly became known as, the best in the company. They were the most beautiful. They were really quick. They were accurate because I checked the formulae, And so it was a very early example of my career. But looking back, I was like, well, that was like investing in breaking through my ceiling of complexity, because I spent a few days that suddenly allowed me to do everything way quicker. And then the time I freed up, I could reinvest in client relationships, drawing insights, working on sales activity, which people at my level generally didn't do. So I started to take on projects very early. People wanted me to be on their projects. and everything else. And I became the youngest ever partner. I mean, it wasn't purely due to that, right? But I think that mentality of saying, where do I invest some time to create ongoing benefit? It's a game changer.
And in fact, I think, you have said that, of course, as we age, we start figuring out that we were doing certain things and couldn't necessarily identify them. And now that you have that in your rearview mirror, is that you realize that there was actually 4 specific shifts that you needed to make in order for those outcomes to occur. So if you could talk a little bit about those 4 shifts you made.
Yeah, they're 4 shifts. The first one is, I like to say to my clients, who are often extremely busy people, and they're like, I need to get out of this low-level work. And I'll say, look, stop trying to free up time. That's the first shift. Stop trying to free up time. Like, what do you mean? Well, something on my podcast, I have a podcast as well, and interview a lot of CEOs. And one of the CEOs explained that he became a master of delegation overnight. He said, Richard, before I wasn't that great at it. I became a master overnight. I've never looked back. It's fantastic. Tell me more. Well, he said, Richard, my wife became seriously ill. And so she went into hospital. And so I delegated everything overnight and went and cared for her. So when we have a high value activity, it becomes really easy to delegate. It becomes much easier to free ourselves up. But if you'd asked that guy a day before he knew his wife was ill, whether he could find an hour in his diary for you, he probably couldn't, right? Because even if he freed something up, there'd be something else that came in. So when I say focus on freeing up time for things and rather than freeing up time from things. Okay, so you're trying to, it's not actually about the freeing up of time; it's about the rotating to those breakthrough activities.
Okay, so you bring up an interesting point. So obviously, his shift, occurred out of a mandate, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, a consequence, a circumstance. He didn't have a choice, and it had to happen quick, like the overnight thing. Well, that's an exception. I think most of us are sitting there and saying, okay, well, I need to make the shift to try to, get my mindset right, to free up time for things. But I've got, all of these different factors that are impacting me, right? Yeah. And that whole resistance to change is problematic. So there's a quote or a phrase that I attribute to Elon Musk, if you think about it. And while he didn't necessarily quote or say this, but kind of piecing things together when you start looking at what he's done and some of the things that he says is basically, one of the most difficult things in regarding to change is associated with things that you used to do 2 years ago that are now obsolete.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I would dare to say, and while out of certain habit, we're probably doing, things that are quite obsolete and not impacting us and providing value. But oftentimes it's hard for us to jettison those things because, like you were saying, well, this is familiar. I have a good habit and routine down, right?
Yeah,
it's a comfort zone.
Yeah. Exactly. Most people focus on what they did last year, made them successful last year, and it's the comfort zone. We need to be focused on what makes us successful next year. That's what I love doing with my clients. I'm always asking them, like, what is the thing that made you so successful last year that is going to be your trap for the next year? Oh. It's going to be the trap. And a lot of people will say, I'm brilliant at this. Yeah, but that was last year, right? What's going to be next year? So you're absolutely right. Somebody else on my podcast said that in their company, they have a motto, which is, because it's a super fast growing tech company, that if you're doing the same job, if you're doing the same things you're doing last year, you're failing. Because how can you be doing the same things we were doing last year in this company, right? Where we're growing at whatever it is, 40% a year.
Well, and for many of us, I would dare to say, going back and looking at, March 2020 versus, April 2020, if you were doing the same thing, in April that you were doing in March, when all the lockdown and all that happened, your extinction was accelerated.
Yeah, exactly. So that's right. So that's why one of the things I really help my clients work on is getting really clear on what their most valuable activities and projects are, because when they understand that, And then they start to think about what their least valuable 20% is. Then they can start to migrate, right? And you replace the $10 an hour activities or the $100 an hour activities with the $1 million activities or whatever it is.
Okay, so that was the first one. It was trying to get our mind shift from thinking about freeing up to do things. And so what's the second one?
Yeah, the second one is you don't need a productivity hack. You need a mindset shift. So it's all in our head, right? Fundamentally, whatever we do, it's not based on reality. It's based on our perception of what is reality. It's our perception of what is necessary, what is required, what is desirable, what is possible. That's how we make our decisions. And we need to shift the way that we think about things to decide that other things are necessary, possible, desirable. So, for example, one of my clients was a senior finance leader. And he was saying, I'm completely swamped. I'm involved in some real core processes in the business. I'm the only one who can really deliver them. My team are not quite up to the standard yet. And I know that I need to deliver this. These things need to be delivered with a really high standard. So I'm the only one who can do it. Now, I knew that actually, I'm sure his team was, his team needed to be doing this, right? It wasn't, he should be moving up. So I said to him, so what you're telling me is that you are being the high-performing janitor. You are like getting out there, polishing those floor tiles, making them absolutely spankling clean, shiny, could eat your dinner off them. But in the meantime, you're not doing the hard stuff, right? You're not actually you're not running the business. You're polishing the floor tiles. You're the high-performing janitor. This was just a way to try to shock him out of his way of thinking, right? Because his belief was, it's really important. I'm the only one that can do it, and it needs to be done perfectly. And my point was, well, yeah, you're doing low-level activities perfectly. But what the business really needs from you now are higher-level activities. So we worked with him 2 or 3 months later. He came back and said he went to his manager and said, what shall I be doing now? Because I've got all this free time, because he'd managed to train up his team, empower his team. And now he's got a much broader span of opportunity. He's working cross-functionally in the organization. He's up-leveled dramatically. But before, he was snarled up in all these other things because he was being this high-performing janitor, right? He was focusing on perfectionism and the comfort of knowing what he was doing. So you have to examine your beliefs first, right? I didn't need to teach him a productivity hack about how to optimize his Gmail for better, to be faster. He needed to shift how he saw his role and the value he was adding.
Okay, so as you started talking about that, I started thinking about the whole comment that you made about how they're not soft skills or super skills. You need to spend more time in developing those super skills, right? Okay, so then the other shift that we need to make is about what we often think in regards to speed and doing things faster. Maybe even agility kind of gets thrown in there, and confused, maybe even velocity. But you said what we really need to think about is acceleration. What's the difference?
Yeah, so acceleration, not speed. So most leaders will default to solving the problem fast. There's an issue, I solve it, and we move on. And you're probably the best person to solve a problem fast because you're senior, you're experienced, people have come to you. You can probably solve it faster than anybody. But if you think about what you're trying to do here is you're trying to build a system, you're trying to build a flywheel. You're not trying to build a hamster wheel. You're already on the hamster wheel. Okay, you need to get off. And so if you think about the difference, it's really, am I using my time, which is speed? I'm like solving the problem. I'm delivering on the customer requirement. I'm delivering on the monthly process, whatever it is. I'm just getting it done, speed. Or am I investing my time, which is acceleration, because I invest it now and I get this kind of compound exponential effect, right? As I said with my Excel toolbar or whatever, right? Invested the time. I wasn't going fast when I was doing that. I was going backwards, right? I was not creating anything useful, so it seemed. But then suddenly I accelerated and I was going faster than anybody. Acceleration also comes from when you slow down to train up your team so you never have to do the task again, right? You slow it down and then it comes back big time. And it's also about looking at what are the improvements you can make in your own workflow. One of my colleagues once said that he always used to buy a $2 hammer whenever he wanted to do any work around the home, because he said, I only do it once a year, and the hammer falls apart after about 10 hits, but it did the job. I'll buy another one in next year when I need to do another job. But he said, if I was a carpenter, I would buy the $100 hammer that's kind of shock absorbed and titanium based and super light and, whatever it is, right, perfectly built, because it's the tool of my trade. And so he said, I'm a knowledge worker. I make sure I have the latest phone, the biggest computer screen. I've optimized my shortcut keys, whatever it is, because it's the tool of my trade. I need to have the $100 hammer. And it shifted my way about how I thought about my own technical setup. But it also applies to other things. When you're a leader, the tool of your trade is things like your team. I mean, you've got your personal IT setup and productivity setup, but you've also got how you work with your team, right? How you work with the organization. This is the tool of your trade to get things done. So you need to be investing in building it up as great as possible. Otherwise, you're just trying to go fast by yourself without any leverage.
Well, as you're talking about that, I also started thinking about how this downflow trickle effects to even the customer. Dealing in and working with many customer service and contact center operations, and thinking about escalations and problem solving, is that most of the issues are really systematic in nature. It's the old 80-20 rule. Yeah. So when customers are calling about complaints, it's system generated problems. It's something of a process or procedure or product or things along those lines.
Yeah.
And so if we don't fix those, guess what? We're always taking those repeated, inferences and issues and just moving them down line. I mean, it never changes. But if I don't pull back, I'm going to have that problem ongoing.
Yeah, and what the problem is that some people have got into their heads the idea that it's fantastic to be working on the urgent and important tasks, right, on that matrix. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm really good at focusing on the urgent and important. I'm like, no, that's the death zone. Like, that's called firefighting. Like, when there's a fire that's burning your damn house down, you've got to, like, that is urgent and important. But who wants to be spending their life, like, literally risking their whole life, right, to put out a fire because the house is raging around them, right, and smoke coming out? It's a terrible place. But in business, it kind of feels exciting. We're out there, we've got urgent things to deal with, but it's totally the wrong place to be. You say you want to work on the system issues. I remember the founder of Starbucks went to one of his stores somewhere, and he noticed that so he turned up. It was meant to be a big deal. He was visiting the store, and like one of the letters was out on the side, like it didn't, I don't know, never you and the Starbucks or something. It was Starbucks, it wasn't lit up properly. And what did he do? Well, he could have done a few things, right? He could have fixed it himself. He could have got the manager to come out and told the manager off. You got my store. Look at this. This is outrageous. This is not the image we want to present. He could have told the manager to come and fix it right now. Didn't do any of those things. He picked up his phone, called his operations director and say, yeah, Bob, what's that process for fixing broken light bulbs? Like, do we have a system? That was his action, was like, let's make sure we have a system so we never have a broken light bulb anywhere ever again. Or if we do, we know how we fix it. Right? That's a totally different way of thinking, right? He's not, he's there building acceleration, right? He's not, the speedy thing to do would be just to go and replace the light bulb.
So I early in my, I don't know about early, but many years ago, I actually had the opportunity to present on behalf of JD Power and Associates, and spoke right before Howard spoke to the groups. As you were talking about him and Starbucks, I'm like, that's my little claim to fame that I actually opened the show for Howard.
Excellent.
So that was fun, but and it kind of, for me, when you started talking about that, it makes a whole lot of sense. However, kind of go back full circle to that whole expectations piece. The person who's getting stuff done, and they're an up and coming, keep getting things piled upon them, right? And so you say that as part of the fourth shift that needs to happen. You need to work the room. What does that mean? Work the room.
Well, you can't level up without renegotiating your agreements. Now, this is true in business. It's true in your home life. Let's imagine that you wanted to lose some weight or go, take up exercise or something, right? You know that the people you need to convince about this is your family, right? Because the people close to you are the ones most likely to put the tempting cake in front of you when you're trying to diet, or, roll over and give you a cuddle in bed and not let you get out to go for your early morning run or whatever it is, right? I mean, unless they're bought in, it's going to be really hard for you to make the change. And it's very similar. It's exactly the same in the world of work. I'll give you an example, actually, before we go there. There was one client of mine, he's a chief human resources officer of a very large global tech company. And he'd just been promoted to the C-suite. So the CEO, who's another client of mine, asked me to work with him and just help him up level to really bring his best in the new role and really think big and expansively. And so we identified some transformational projects that he was going to lead. These are projects that he'd done some good regional projects around the company, but this was like really big company-wide shifts. And after a few sessions, we were making good progress. He came to me and he said, Richard, I'm spending too much time in email. I'm just stuck in my email. There's so much demand on my time. I'm not getting to spend enough time as I wanted to on these projects. So I was like, okay, well, so he said, give me some tips. A lot of clients say, give me some tips. And I always know that they never need tips from me. That's not what they need. That's what they think they need. It's not what they need. So I said, well, tell me a bit more about what's going on with your email. Well, I try to clear out my inbox regularly because I don't want to be, that guy people are waiting on. I want to be responsive. So, okay. And why is that important? He thought, and he said, well, I want to be a trustworthy and responsible team player. I want to be reliable. Reliable and trustworthy. And so I don't want to be, say, that guy everyone's waiting for. You have to keep following up, who's slowing everybody else down because he's not responding. And he was a lovely man, so I understood it, right? He didn't want to let people down. But I said to him, look, at this point, there is no way that I can give you a tip that's going to change your behavior, because your identity is in this whole thing of I'm not going to let my people down, right? I'm reliable, trustworthy. That's who I am. So if I teach you how to be unreliable, untrustworthy, you're not going to do it. It's going to be against your values. So tell me something. What's the CEO want from you right now? If he was in this room with us, in this coaching session with us, what would he be asking? He said, well, he'd love me to be getting on with these projects that we talked about. Yeah. What about the shareholders? Well, obviously, because it's going to really make a difference on morale, engagement, and results fundamentally. Yeah. What about the team itself? What about the employee base, the 7,000 employees? Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're desperate for the organization to be modernized, to have better processes and systems, a better employee experience. So, okay, so they're keen. What about customers? Well, customers, not going to see it directly, but they would probably be for it as well, because if my employees are spending less time doing the internal stuff, they spend more time on the customers and adding value. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, everybody wants you to be doing these big projects. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so at this point, I want to propose to you that when you are doing your emails, you're actually being unreliable and untrustworthy because you're not adding your contributions while you're getting paid the big bucks, right? You're not doing the thing that you're being paid for at this level, which is these game-changing initiatives. And of course, he's got it. It's an example of the mindset shift. Immediately, he didn't need me to tell him the ins and outs. He suddenly resaw who he was and what he was there to do in a new light. But the relevance for this shift is that you can't necessarily just quit email and not tell anybody. You need to renegotiate. You need to even go to his CEO and say, look, I've got these big projects to work on. Obviously, you're my manager. If you need to get in touch with me, send me a text anytime. But in terms of sending me emails, I'm only going to be doing those, once a day. And I won't probably reply as quickly as I used to, and it might even take me a week, unless it's urgent. Is that okay? Do you understand? Because I really want to focus on these projects. And the CEO was like, yeah, sure. If it's urgent, I'll let you know. But otherwise, sure, I get it. And then he, perhaps had to go to his peers or to his team and just say, look, this is how it is, right? If you've got an urgent thing, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to, I'm not the person for you anymore. So he had to renegotiate these agreements. He had to tell some people, he had to perhaps negotiate a little bit with other people, make sure it's okay with them. Sometimes I recommend clients put a little thing on their email signature just to let people know, this is how I'm playing at the moment. I've got a lot of work on, I've got some big projects. So don't be surprised if this happens. So when you renegotiate the agreements, then the system around you changes, right? You're not subject to quite the same pressures. At least you've faced those pressures, and you've had the hard conversations, right? This is why this kind of shift is, as I say, it's not a tool or a trick. It's that mindset challenge. There's a behavior challenge because you have to do things that are a bit uncomfortable for you. And it's a leadership challenge. It's a leadership challenge because you have to work the room, because you have to have the hard conversations with people. You have to actually say, I'm sorry, I can't please you at this point because I'm too busy serving the greater good. And that's why I say a lot of it's not really about what we think. We think it's about working faster, working smarter, all these things, but it's these deeper issues of mindset and leadership that count.
It's very insightful. Thank you for sharing. I mean, those 4 specific shifts, you're talking about, I think you could probably add those to some of the super skills that we were referring to earlier. You need those super skills in order, to continue to add the value where it's readily needed. Okay. So, however, when you start talking about making these shifts, and even like with that person who you were referring to with the example of, saying that, hey, this is what I think I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing this particular activity, but I needed to pull back and get a different perspective, and now I can realign. Is we need to continually be focused, and help us to be diligent in that process. And one of the things that we do on the show is we look at quotes to help us do that. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
Yeah, man, there's so many quotes. Let me think about what I love. Yeah, I mean, one of the quotes that I live by really, is we don't get what we want, we get who we are. We don't get what we want, we get who we are. And so it really goes back to that question of, what am I pursuing in this moment? What am I pursuing? Am I pursuing, normally it's either fear or contribution. Most of us, we're governed by fear a lot of the time. Like, what will my boss say if I do this? What will my colleagues say? But when we are on fire, when we have a sense of mission, and when we are pursuing our maximum contribution, the greatest value that we can add, that's again one of those key mindset shifts that changes our level of impact. I'm trying to think of some other quotes. There's normally I have so many coming to my mind. I guess the other one that I love is around this subject is, when you go racing, well, I don't go racing much, but if you were to go to a race course and drive a car around a racetrack or a sports car, one thing they will tell you is go slow to go smooth and go smooth to go fast. And it's a great image, because when you slow your thinking down and you're not rushing around, you get out that tunnel vision. You start to see things you didn't see before. And that's where you see the opportunity to accelerate. And so...
And I think what you just said right there in that quote is also kind of what's behind the show name, the Fast Leader Show. It's not about the hacks and the shortcuts, and it's not about the fact that I have horsepower. It's the fact that if I do things correctly, I do them smoothly, the acceleration will come. So I may not be the one who catches you in the first 10 feet, right? I'm not going to pass you and be the one who's out front in the first 10 feet. But by the time we get to 100 feet or 100 yards or whatever, 100 meters, I'm going to blow you away.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful.
Perfect.
Okay. So when I think about this, you and I talked about, the ceiling of complexity, the 4 levers. We talked about goals and objectives. And I think that's really important for us to get an understanding of you and where you're going, with all this and some of your goals. Is there a goal that you can share?
One of my own goals. Yeah. So, I'm on a mission. What I want to do is multiply the impact of 100 world-class leaders 100 times. That's kind of my overall mission, right? Now that's the goal. Is it a goal? It is a goal, but this is like a multi, it might be my 25-year goal, right? But it's the thing that really drives me, because if we can take 100 leaders who are already world-class, super competent, got all the resources, the relationships, everything else, and actually multiply that positive impact that they can make in the world by a factor of 100, then it leaves a real dent. So that's kind of like what I'm up to, big time, if you like. That's kind of my North Star. And then along the way, there's other things. This topic we are talking about, I'm writing a book on. I'm running a CEO mastermind with some of the world's best technology and digital sector CEOs. I have my coaching practice, my consulting work. So all that stuff is contributing, right? But it's all flowing towards that 25-year mission.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Richard, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Richard Medcalf, are you ready to hoe down?
Okay, let's do this.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
What is holding me back is, as always, I think for everyone, it's always courage. There's always be that bit braver, push yourselves a bit more.
And what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Well, one of them is from John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco at the time, who said his favorite bit of leadership advice was always go to the bathroom before a big meeting. If you want, that was his piece of leadership advice. If I was giving one, I would say always focus on who it is that you are serving, and always find real people that you can think about.
And what is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
One of my best tools is, I'm going to say it's my to-do application, simply because it means that I can download everything from my mind and then actually be present with whatever it is that I believe I need to be focusing on in the moment.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? And it could be from any genre.
The book I would recommend would be from any genre. I would say the Bible, because that's near and dear to me, but that's a bit of an easy one. And even for those people who believe they've written it off, I would say prepare to be surprised sometimes at what you will find. But I would also say that, there's so many books I read and now I can't think of one. I would say there's a book called the Myth of Self. Oh my God! I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the book. It's something like the Myth of Self-Deception, or Leadership. It's something called Leadership and Self-Deception, which is a fantastic book about how we get in our own way and we live in a different reality from what everybody else sees.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net and doing a search for Richard Medcalf. Okay, Richard, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25 and you've been given the knowledge and skills to take back with you, but you can't take them all. You can only take one. So what piece of skill or knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I think I would really focus on, I'd really tell my younger self to always be looking at doing the thing which is a bit exciting and a bit challenging, to really focus on growth. There've been moments in my career, where I think I probably stagnated a bit. I plateaued for a while. I got a bit comfortable. I'm out of that now, for sure. I'm on a mission and I'm loving it. But there were definitely moments, I think, where I probably got a bit comfortable, got a bit safe. And looking back, I think those are missed opportunities.
Richard,
I pursue courage.
Absolutely. Richard, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Yeah, a few things. Obviously, look me up on LinkedIn. That's great. Otherwise, go to my website, X-Quadrant. Is X and then the word quadrant.com. One thing people might enjoy, if you've enjoyed this episode, is to go to xquadrant.com/go/productivity, where you can find out about a little email course I put together called Freeing Yourself Up for Strategic Activity. And then the other place, and that's just like about 8 emails that will kind of give you some different shifts that you might be able to implement in your own life. And the other one is, if you're interested in hearing me speak to other really high-level CEOs, then check out the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast.
Richard Medcalf, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, helping us all get over the hump.
Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.